monstrous bulk, and chose to take action against it instead. Roserade remains a piece of Generation 5 UU to this day, while DLD, though it took longer than one would expect from a Deoxys form that somehow wound up in UU, was finally banned. Deoxys defense didn't take long to go from BL to a genuine OU Pokemon, as it had already established itself as the new face of the hyper offense playstyles immediately in the wake of Deoxys Speed's ban in Black and White 1. The same max HP, max speed dual hazard set from UU was similarly incredible in the tier above, starting the game with momentum and effectively powering up OU's most dangerous sweepers like Dragonite and Terrakion even more. It also didn't take long for the complaints about DLD to start rolling in. Its ease and nigh unstoppable hazard stacking, while concurrently preventing opposing hazards, was considered by many to be broken and unreasonably difficult to deal with, for the same reasons as Deoxys Speed. In many ways, DLD was even harder to deal with as a result of its monstrous bulk, allowing it to tank hits like non-banded Tyranitar's Crunch without having to dedicate its item to it. Speaking of its item, though the standard Rocky Helmet set was ridiculous enough, DLD could actually go on the offensive, threatening to actually KO several Pokemon commonly used against it. It wouldn't expect Deoxys defense to be capable of dishing out actual offense, but it had several versatile tools to turn the tables and make itself even more of an issue. DLD was too difficult to KO, so most anti-Deoxys defense options revolved around Rapid Spin. But as if Rocky Helmet and Nightshade alongside Gengar spin blocking wasn't enough, DLD could threaten to actually immediately KO the spinners, freeing it from the need to run spin blocking support. It could run Electric Gem Thunder to destroy the immensely popular bulky Starmie and put huge pressure on Tentacruel, or it could run Life Orb and range between Psycho Boost, Hidden Power Fire, and Super Power to smash Tentacruel, Fortress, and Choice Band Tyranitar respectively. DLD managed to survive in the tier longer than it probably should have been allowed to. Not until well into Black and White 2 was it suspected and at long last banned. Deoxys defense's Generation 5 continued in Ubers.
This is where we live. What's outside?
Monsters.
To Black and White 2 was it suspected and at long last banned. Deoxys defense's Generation 5 continued in Ubers. Its best quality was its ability to act as a nearly perfect counter to Psycho Killer Mewtwo, while easily laying down the spikes that defined the tier and shutting down opposing bulky spikers with taunt. This allowed it to shine on certain balanced teams, which usually could not switch into Mewtwo safely and were forced to sacrifice against it. Running DLD allowed them to better keep up with dangerous Mewtwo hyper offense teams, while not allowing opposing balanced teams to send in their Ferrothorn to match spikes. DLD's niche was a bit specific, but it was both unique and excellent at what it did, giving it a genuine place in the Ubers metagame and capping off a thoroughly eventful 5th generation for it. Deoxys Speed took a while to get going in Generation 5 OU. It was reasonable that it would get overlooked at the beginning, given the amount of crazy new powerful toys the generation brought. However, once the metagame settled, DOS showed once again how ridiculously good it was. Its Life Orb set was decent, but not really seen in high-level play. Instead, DOS was used for its ability to fuel various hyper offense teams. In addition to its numerous spiking sets later replicated exactly by Deoxys defense, Deoxys Speed also effortlessly provided dual screens for already monster sweepers like Volcarona and Multiscale Dragonite, catapulting them into new realms of absurdity. It was even easier for them to set up and even more difficult for the opponent to actually revenge kill them, especially since DOS was so easily able to prevent opposing Stealth Rock. DOS and DLD teams were usually weatherless, but they were so good they were considered on par with weather teams. Most of the time, not using weather was suboptimal, but the Deoxys forms were one of the rare exceptions. So outstanding were they in their ability to command the game and set perfect conditions for their team right from turn 1. DOS was complained about for some time, but it wasn't until Excadrill and Thundurus were banned that it was seriously examined as overwhelming in its own right. With these bans, the OU tier had lost 2 of its best anti-offense options in Sandrush Excadrill's insane speed and Prankster Thundurus's priority Thunderwave, and DOS hyper offense became even more overwhelming, completely taking over the metagame. DOS effortlessly set the stage for the Scizor Rotom Wash Volt Turn combination to become even more absurd, turn Choice Band Terrakion into even more of an automatic KO machine, made Dragon Dance Dragonite downright uncounterable without a Quagsire, and so much more. As a result, sometime after Excadrill and Thundurus were removed from OU, so too was Deoxys Speed. It would wind up being the last Pokemon banned in Black and White 1. Deoxys Speed returned to Ubers and once again completely defined hyper offense. Despite being a dedicated dedicated lead, it was just like Deoxys attack, and that team preview really let it act as a better lead. And this is in the generation where it was speculated that dedicated leads would cease to exist. DOS loved several of Generation 5's additions. It loved Rocky Helmet, which let it passively punish Rapid Spin and break Tyranitar's Focus Sash, meaning it was even less strapped for move slots. It loved the buff Magic Coat and Mental Herb that let it potentially gain edges in early game taunt wars with opposing DOS. It loved the buff Sleep mechanic that turned its favorite teammate, Darkrai, into even more of a nigh uncounterable monster. And most of all, it loved the monstrous new offensive threats it supported. Chief among them were many ferocious Arceus forms, such as Electric Ground Fighting and of course, Ghost, which provided a terrific spin blocking alternative to the still excellent Giratina origin. There were also others such as Scarf and Mixed Zekrom, the newly buffed Mewtwo and Rayquaza through the additions of Psystrike and V-Create respectively, and come Black and White 2, the metagame defining Scarf Genesect. Even offbeat Pokemon like Magic Bounce Espeon didn't stop DOS. If anyone tried that, they might just find themselves on the bad end of a skill swap. For the second straight generation, Deoxys Speed Hyper Offense completely defined Ubers, and all in all, Generation 5 was once again a tremendous generation for Deoxys as a whole. Deoxys Normal was finally given a chance to truly shine in the very earliest stage of XYOU. It made the most of this chance because its time in OU didn't last long. It absolutely dominated the tier in the short time it was allowed. Its all-out offensive sets were absolutely absurd. DON destroyed most of the metagame through brute force alone, which was already an issue given how instantly fast it was. And even the few Pokemon that could check its combination of Psycho Boost and Superpower reliably, like Aegislash, Mandibuzz, and Sizzler, could be easily dispatched with coverage moves. Priority moves weren't even necessarily enough to finish DON off. It needed several rounds of Life Orb damage before it would fall into range for something like Mega Lucario's Bullet Punch, but even this wasn't enough for several reasons. One, several rounds of Life Orb damage meant DON was KOing something before these Pokemon even got a chance to switch in. Two, most priority attacks were incredibly easy to switch out of and absorb with another Pokemon. Even Talonflame's Brave Bird was coming off of a merely decent attack stat. Three, even Talonflame could be foiled because it had to be healthy enough to survive DON's own priority move, Extreme Speed. That was just the all-out attacker too. Focus Sash Stealth Rock leads were also devastating, dishing out a ton of damage if not a KO, while getting up rocks with ease. Alternatively, it could just throw down rocks and spikes and let the other insane teammates get to work. The newly buffed Defog couldn't stop it, as DON could easily threaten every Defogger. It just went to show DON had previously been Uber for a reason. When there was no Deoxys attack around, Deoxys Normal was unbelievably threatening, and so for how incredibly overpowered it was, DON was swiftly banned from OU, alongside one of its common teammates, Blaziken. Sadly, it was once again not seen at all in Ubers for the same reason as Generation 5, but it now had pleasant memories of destroying OU to satiate it. The OU player base did not make the mistake of testing Deoxys attack again, and thus left it to terrorize Ubers. Their DOA was once again absolutely brutal, both thoroughly enjoying the buff knockoff, whether as a Sash lead or a mid-game Life Orb nuke. DOA was a fixture on hyper offense teams that didn't run DOS. It took a while for it to take off thanks to the addition of annoyingly decent pseudo-checks Klefki and Yveltal, but DOA wound up reminding everyone why it was so dangerous. Klefki struggled to switch in, and it sacrificed itself to get a Thunder Wave off on DOA. It would no longer be alive to check DOA's teammate Xerneas, while DOA could punish the Stealth Rock weak Yveltal in some form by using anything besides Psycho Boost on the switch. Even a resisted knockoff would be useful to remove Yveltal's item on top of the Stealth Rock chip. Speaking of Psycho Boost, the move on Life Orb sets really took off in ORAS, as its obscene power and useful neutral coverage against popular Pokemon allowed Deoxys attack to automatically delete a significant portion of the opponent's team. Even the best Pokemon in the tier, like Primal Groudon, Mega Salamence, Xerneas, Primal Kyogre, Mega Gengar, and most Arceus forms, had to run from it, and switch-ins were in short supply, as Klefki, Yveltal, and Dialga were absolutely pounded by Life Orb superpower, while the Lati twins were destroyed by knockoff. DOA ripped through offense, balance, and stall alike, in addition to its naturally huge speed, giving it the jump on even fast Pokemon such as Mewtwo and its two new Mega Evolutions. It could even help deal with the few faster Pokemon, like boosted Mega Ment or Xerneas with Life Orb Extreme Speed, which also helped it finish off weakened Yveltal, non-first turn Mega Kangaskhan, or Extreme Killer Arceus, beating them to the punch on Sucker Punch or Arceus' own Extreme Speed, respectively. DOA could potentially play mind games with Yveltal. If they were in a situation where Yveltal couldn't Roost or Dark Pulse because it would be KO'd by Superpower or Ice speed, DOA could bypass its need to Sucker Punch or get KO'd by extreme speeding, which would 2-hit KO from such a range and cause Sucker Punch to fail. It was one of the many ways in which Deoxys attack was yet again one of the most threatening Pokemon around, this time in the most powerful Uber tier yet. And now we'll momentarily group Deoxys defense and Deoxys speed together, as they both started in OU and function largely the same. Many players thought their hazard stacking ways would be kept in check by Defog, but those players thought wrong. DLD paired up with Bisharp, whose Defiant ability activated thanks to Defog's side effect of lowering the opponent's evasion. This meant any Defog attempt gave Bisharp a free Swords Dance, which was especially dangerous given Bisharp's huge attack, buff knockoff, and steel no longer resisting dark. The Deal Sharp combination rocked OU and was especially dangerous not just because Bisharp was such a great Pokemon in general, but because Deoxys didn't even need it to handle Defog. They could just taunt the Defog attempt and continue stacking their hazards, providing the basis of their fierce offensive teammates like Greninja and Mega Mawile to grab momentum and easily run away with the game. Deoxys Speed's Life Orb set also returned with a vengeance. It posed a massive offensive threat in its own right, as it was immense